When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 73. Oh, it's OCD, but she'll grow out of it. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Claire McKillop. Claire is an honors graduate from the Social Service Worker program at Fanshawe College, located in London, Ontario. She holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Guelph and is a certified life coach. Claire's passion for people stems from her love for community. This passion has led her to become the Director of Community Engagement with All Women Lead, a co-coach for Slay Your Inner Critic, an intensive 8-week life coaching program, and provide communication supports with Shifting Perspectives, a London, Ontario-based anti-racism programming organization. Through years of volunteering with Rotary and Youth for Social Justice clubs, Claire developed her love for community through coordinating fundraisers, international mission trips, and more. In 2013, she received an honorable mention through the Keg Steakhouse Spirit Foundation for her fundraising initiatives and time spent building a school in the Dominican Republic. Claire is known for her grounding, light energy, and contagious laughter. Her intuitive gifts allow her to connect and celebrate the joys within life, while also recognizing the importance of healing and adversity within each person's journey. Well, hello, Claire. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited.
You're excited. My goodness. I mean, I'm excited as well. For me, it is such a lovely opportunity, Claire, to have you as a guest on the show today. And I'm quite grateful for your willingness to be here today to tell your story.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to dive right into it.
Amazing. Honestly, it is a blessing and a true honor to encounter guests like yourself who allow me to tap into their vulnerabilities and draw on their strength, draw on their insight and inspiration, all of those things that get shared in this space. And it's really important that we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma.
Yes, thank you so much, Salima. There is so many important parts to that I'm just so looking forward to getting into with you.
Yes, we're definitely going to be unpacking all of it. And just before we do that, just in case you're still wondering, this podcast, it's all about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether it's directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter what the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way which remains tucked away. So, this platform serves in a way to break the barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So, today, my mission, my hopeful mission, is that for both of us to continue to be in a space where we are encouraging people to share and tell what individuals typically have reservation to express. And of course, I'm also continuing to bring forward a trend, and it's called the mental beauty rethink. Claire, what are the first thoughts that come and pop in your mind when you hear the phrase the mental beauty rethink?
I love that phrase,
Mm-hmm.
mental beauty. Oh, and it
Yeah.
is, isn't it? When I
Mm-hmm.
when I first think of mental beauty, I think about the holistic nature of what that means, right? It's the mental beauty in the positive and the negative, because it can be, I don't want to say hard, but it's different appreciation that you have for the positive and the good and the happy times when you also experience the times of feeling down and not feeling those really great positive emotions, right? So that balance and contrast between the two can be really beautiful. That's what comes to mind for me.
It's beautiful. And it sounds like you're saying that there's this way of accepting life, accepting things, accept being. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's an acceptance, and it's not so much a push and a pull, right? And just being not even okay, but like you said, accepting where you are and who you are within
Hmm.
this life.
Right. And it's also when you share that, it I got this download of, light and darkness, right? And the
Hmm.
balance might not always be 50-50, but even in
Yeah.
darkness there is light, and even in light there's darkness. Mental beauty, it varies. But if we're able to invite it in as something we can be open and curious about, reframing it as beauty,
Hmm.
I just feel it allows us to be more free and spontaneous.
Yes. Yeah, it allows a flow. It
Yeah,
allows a flow, I think.
allows a flow. What a beautiful way to articulate. All right, Miss Claire, I am pumped, eager, and ready to uncover your story. Shall we dive in?
Yes, let's do it.
Amazing. I'm ready as well, even though you're the one being interviewed.
I know.
But on a serious note, and as we get
Mhm.
started, Claire, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
Yeah, thinking about the newspaper title, how I would say it is fearless, trusting, and fully embraced. Those three words really come to mind because it's how I feel like the outcome of my journey that I was on has kind
Mm-hmm.
of come to be, right? So how much I went through all of the years of having such intense feelings of self-doubt and not having acceptance, but working through that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a title that's a reminder of that time in my life.
It's like you're taking your power back. And so say the title one more time.
Yeah, it's fearless, trusting, and fully embraced.
Fearless, trusting, and fully embraced. Having that you touched on what it meant for you, and knowing that these words, symbolize the outcome of your journey from where you were to where you are now. It's it shows that you've been working hard to get yourself to where you are, to be able to claim
Hmm.
fearless, trusting, fully embraced. Honor that. That's lovely.
Yeah, yeah, I love how you said claim it. Oh, I
Mm.
love that because that's what it is, right? It's
Yeah.
it's claiming, it's that confidence that yeah, I know this is who I am, and I know that's
You
this
are
is
in
this
your
is who I get to
right.
be.
Yes, you're in
Yes,
your right.
exactly.
Well, then, without further ado, let's get right in. Tell us what your untold story is all about. Who, what, when, where, everything. I want to know.
Okay, okay. The 411.
Yes.
I'm ready to tell it. So my untold story is being informally diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder at a really young age of 4 or 5, with my doctor, so with my family physician, and telling my parents this is what I most likely have, but I'll grow out of it. right? So it's not a concern. I'll grow out of it. Everything's cool. So it wasn't mentioned, growing up, even though I struggled with things like control, obsessive thoughts, a lot of different kind of body tics or stimming, which is kind of more trending word now for it. Anxiety, I struggle with routine, self acceptance, a lot of the themes of not being good enough, a lot of self doubt, a lot of identity confusion of wondering why I was that way and a lot of people around me were not, right? Until I was in my mid 20s, carrying that with me, and then being so curious when I hit my 20s about, okay, what's really going on here. So it was a roller coaster of healing, coming to terms with my now very true and authentic identity, and getting on track to love and discover that person.
Right. So let's go back for a second. I mean, it's so beautiful how you were able to paint such a vivid picture and walked us through that. I'm just curious. So, did your parents ever sit down and tell you, like, so this is what the doctor said, this is what it means, or because they told your parents she'll grow out of it, they just kind of let it be?
They more so just kind of let it be. They had brought me in because I was showing a lot of signs of, kind of, like I said, like tics. So what I would do
Mm-hmm.
is I would kind of throw my neck back and
Mm,
really stretch it out. And it was really obvious when I was doing that. And
right.
in my head, I was going 1, 2, 3, go. So that was kind of a little like mantra or a little ritual that I had, is I'd throw my neck back 4 times. I do it on the 1, 2, the 3, and the go. And then I would just continue on. And now thinking back on it, I did it when I felt really strong emotions. So if I was really anxious, if I was really excited, if I was feeling kind of intense feelings, I would do that. Right. So I had that with my neck. And then I also did it with my hands as well. I would shake them when I got really excited. And you can see me when I was younger in a ton of videos growing up of me at my birthday when the cake is being
Right.
handed
Yeah,
down and
yeah.
I'm shaking my hands,
Right, right. It's
and
exciting.
everyone around me.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I think my parents just kind of thought like, oh, that's just Claire.
Okay.
That's just
Like it's
her
a
and
it's
that's what
a
she
bit.
does.
It's something she's doing. Did they ever
Yeah.
know about the 1, 2, 3, go, like the part that you were doing in your head?
I don't think so, because it
Mhm.
was such an inner dialogue. I think I just assumed at that time that everyone did that. That's what
Okay.
everyone did, right? And it wasn't solely just me. That wasn't
Mhm.
until later in my high school years that I realized, people think differently.
Right, right. And so I'm curious. So if when you were younger, if it showed up more physically, would you say that as you grew up that it just you internalized things more and your rituals changed? Or did your rituals stay the same, but other things changed?
I would say a little bit of both, but mostly I turned it inward. I had a lot of instances growing up where I was really silenced and my voice was really suppressed. And I think that there became a fear of self-expression, right? And in being perceived as obnoxious or annoying, or any of those things that kind of children that were hyperactive, because I was one of those kids that moved around and had to be running around and doing something all the time, right? I was never sitting still. So I think growing up, I still have a little tick that I do when I'm anxious, but I know what it is and I recognize it now. But it mostly manifested inward at the time.
Did the 1, 2, 3, go continue?
I would say it continued. It
Mhm.
it got a little less loud. So
Mhm.
I would be thinking about other things, as you grow up. I think just with the way that our brain grows, so do our
Mhm.
thoughts, right? So
Mhm.
I think my inner dialogue became more centered around an inner critic instead
Mhm.
of so much the counting. But I
Mm.
do, like, to this day, I count when I don't have anything actively I'm thinking about. All of a sudden I'll be at number 54 and I'm like, how long
Okay.
have I been counting for?
Right.
You
So you
know?
space out and then you recognize, "Oh, I was just counting."
Yeah, exactly. I'll
Okay.
count my steps or anything like that.
Claire, in a private conversation that we had recently, you mentioned something about having severe death anxiety. Are you able to bring that into this conversation?
Yeah, yeah. So that was a huge turning point in healing for me too, because I grew up a people pleaser. right?
Mm-hmm.
I had a really hard time with an inability to say no. And especially to people I loved and cared about. And what had happened was, so I had two of my very close friends. I had two best friends at the time. I was in my early 20s. And what happened was both of their partners, so their boyfriends of, one was 7 years, one was 10 years, had died 2 weeks
Mm.
apart from one another and in totally different circumstances. And both of
Wow.
them like hit rock bottom, and both of them felt like I was the saving grace.
Oh my
So
goodness.
uh, yeah, yeah, so that's a lot of expectation to put on
Yeah.
someone in
Yeah.
their early 20s, right? And both of them, their mothers at the time and their families didn't have the capacity to emotionally care for them. So I thought that's what good people did, and I took that on. And being around so much sadness and talk of death and people my age, both of these people were my age that died or
Mm-hmm.
around it. I grew up from that moment in my early 20s. I started to develop a quite intense feeling of death anxiety
Mm-hmm.
because they had both died
Right.
so suddenly,
Right.
and I was surrounded by it. That had become my circle. My circle was deep emotion and talk of death. And I grew up with anxiety, now recognizing that it was most likely from
Mm-hmm.
an OCD diagnosis, not
Mm-hmm.
knowing it, but not knowing where it came from or what to do about it, right? So then it kind of shifted into a death anxiety where I couldn't drive, I couldn't get into cars.
Mm.
I still can't drive on the highway, but that's
Right.
okay because I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it
Yes.
scared.
Yes.
But
Right.
for years, yeah, that's kind of where that came off, and it was because of my inability to say no, and my I couldn't set boundaries.
And it's so important to recognize that now, right? That it's like, oh, sometimes we don't realize that we can make different choices and that we actually have
Yeah,
options, right?
yeah,
But at the time, you
exactly.
didn't know that saying no was an option.
Hmm.
I think part of
And
you
people you
felt,
love.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
like, I'm supposed to. I need
Yeah.
to. They need me. So I'm a little curious with regards to that severe death anxiety. Did you end up experiencing or engaging in any OCD like rituals or have any like obsessive thoughts particular to the death anxiety?
Yeah. Yeah. It showed up in that I got really afraid when my family left the house. So anytime that my mom or my dad would get in a car, I'd think to myself, what did you last say to them? Because this will most likely be the last time you ever see them. So I became really afraid that anyone that left the house was going to die.
Now, that must have been such a heavy load to have in your mind. Did
Right.
the OCD did you end up having any like thoughts that helped you overcome the death anxiety
There wasn't really many that
or
helped with
things,
it.
yeah, or just things that prompted you to keep going?
Yeah, what kept me going and what eventually was the catalyst to not having it anymore was I had such a strong drive to travel. And to do that, I had to go on an airplane, which to me was way scarier than getting in a car. And right, just because I felt when you're on a plane, you feel so that lack of control, right? We're in a car, I can even make up a sense of control, right? Because I'm in the driver's seat, but on a plane, it's like you're just giving up
It's a
that control.
pilot.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
exactly.
a lot of
Like,
more unknown factors, right?
yeah, yeah. So I
Okay.
when I went backpacking, I had to overcome the fear of getting on a plane. And I had been on
Mhm.
many planes in my life, but not since I kind of developed that really strong fear of death.
Mhm.
And that's what did it. I did it, and I did it scared, and
Mhm.
nothing bad happened. And I gave myself the experience of a lifetime. So that was really helpful for me to move through it.
Mhm.
So just to go back to something, when we were talking about rituals and kind of how the OCD showed up for me when I was younger,
Mhm.
is I used to experience that if I didn't do something,
Mhm.
or for example, the 1, 2, 3, go, that was my mantra. So if I
Mhm.
didn't do it right in my mind, however I distinguished right to be, then I was afraid that my family would die in
Mm.
in spite of that, so that that would lead to that. If I didn't stretch my arms and do it perfectly in sync with the 1, 2, 3, go, then
Mhm.
my family would die. And it's almost funny to think back on, because I
Mhm.
never felt really stressed out about it, but it was
Mhm.
just like, okay, I got to do this. Like, this is just something I have to do, or else something bad is going to happen to my family. And I I will say, like, that is something that I don't want to say grew out of it. Maybe it manifested somewhere
Well,
differently, but
it's an intrusive thought is what happened, right?
yeah,
Like, and that's a lot
yeah,
related to the OCD, right? Obsessive
hmm,
compulsive disorder. For our
yeah,
audience, can you take a moment and just share, maybe educate, tell our audience about this, the intrusive thoughts and the OCD. And even though sometimes it's like, how did you come up with that? And you're like, well, it's OCD.
hmm,
Maybe in a sentence or two, share with us what that's all about.
yeah, of course. So, an intrusive thought is something that kind of pops up in your mind, and it doesn't match with reality. That's kind of how I see it. It's that something has to happen, and if that doesn't happen, it's going to affect something to a different outcome that actually isn't related at all. Right? So it's your brain kind of making a connection between two things that aren't connected at all, and putting them together and then linking an outcome based on how you act in that way. So it sounds a little vague, but it's a really good example for the 1, 2, 3, go. And then if I didn't do that, my family would die. And it doesn't come from anywhere. It's just in a thought that pops up. That's why, the term intrusive, because it's intruding. It's just
Yeah,
coming into your brain,
it's
and it's
invading. Yeah. And
exactly,
no, and I,
exactly.
I wanted you to explain it because I wanted to know how it makes sense to you in your world, right? And
Mhm.
how it comes to light. And the way you explained it is not vague at all. I found it to be very clear and
Oh,
so
good.
what a very like a very real way, a real and raw way of explaining it. Just right from the get-go when you say it doesn't mesh with reality. How did you work through combating the intrusive thoughts? Is it
Ye-
like beyond? I know we had started to talk about how, you were dealing with the conquering some fears, fear of flying,
mhm.
fear of getting on the plane rather. Would you say that it was like more like actions like that where you just decided, okay, I'm going to feel this and do it anyway? Or did you end up having a different kind of set of coping thoughts that you would use to combat those thoughts?
Right. I would say it kind of depends on which age I was at. So when I was so young and it was happening, I was 6, 7 years old. And then probably until I was in high school, it was almost as if it wasn't stressful, though. Like, it's as if a bug would land on you and you'd flick it off. Right? It's like, oh, okay, it's here. I just have to do this, get it over with, and then everything's fine. It was almost like an inconvenience. It didn't feel very stressful. It was just like, I have this strong responsibility that I have to do this every time. But it was annoying. It was like,
Hmm.
I don't want to do this because I want to go play with my friends or whatever.
Sure.
I want to go
But it's
organize
like
my
you had these
toys.
extra chores, extra tasks to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And these weird responsibilities that my brain put in on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really were taking responsibility for things that maybe you had no business taking responsibility for, but that is what OCD is all about, right? Like
Yeah.
there are those obsessions and the rituals and the compulsions, and it
Yeah.
really can show up disorderly. I'm curious, I have something to ask. You said it was an informal diagnosis, right, from a young age. And so it's like, okay, it's, she'll grow out of it kind of thing. And I'm guessing that all this time your parents are like, oh, this is Claire. She's just being Claire is being Claire. Were they able to see any trends or patterns, or were they maybe so hopeful that, she's growing out of it? Do you think that they ever attributed those struggles that you were having to anything else?
You know, I think it kind of, again, kind of depended on the age I was at, because
Mhm.
I turned it so inward out of fear of not being liked or being judged. So
Mhm.
the outward part of it, I
Mhm.
started to very much hide. So I wouldn't express, the throwing of the arms or the neck thing in public. It became very private to me.
Mhm.
And I kind of learned how to control it in a way
Mhm.
where I could, almost wait till I got home to have that,
Okay.
or and just turn it inward during the day and kind of mask that part of me so that other
Mm.
people didn't think I was weird,
Mhm.
or judge me for it.
Right.
So to answer your question, Salima,
Mhm.
my my parents always, I think it almost got attributed to growing pains through high school.
Mhm.
A lot of
Mhm.
people, struggle in a high school for
Yeah.
acceptance and identity and all those themes, because you're coming into your own, you're going through puberty, there's so much
Yes.
happening.
So much
So I think,
like a lot of hormonal changes. And when you say
yeah,
growing pains for you, are you alluding to perhaps emotional growing pains or just growing pains all over?
I would say emotional
Mhm.
growing pains, right?
Okay.
The shyness, the low self-esteem, the things that you kind of think of, or at least I think of because I'm in a mental health field, that teenagers would experience or adolescents would experience. Right? So I think it was more just working through what I was going through in the moments, instead of trying to figure out if there was a bigger picture to it. So I was very well supported by my mother and my father in those times, but it was more, let's handle what's happening right now, and let's, there wasn't looking at what could this be something more?
Related to
Could
other
it
things
be that,
and a bigger
yeah,
picture and related to things that
exactly.
don't seem to be as apparent, right? And sometimes there's as teenagers and growing up, there are other acute stressors, and as teenagers, sometimes there's a lot of crises that individuals go through. And while they might not seem
Exactly.
like crises to the adults, they're
Mhm.
crises for the individuals because that's the life. That's what is showing up in their life. And so, can you give me an example of something that was very apparent that you had to struggle with in that age where you were going through school and like a rough period where you noticed your social skills were limited or something and how that affected you, and because you talked a lot about the shyness and the low self-esteem and having to mask parts of you.
Yeah, yeah, they showed up in in a lot of different spaces. They showed up academically. I I'm a creative. Science and math did not come naturally for me, but the arts did, drama did. Music, things like that did come more natural, but because I had developed such a strong fear of being myself, because that meant that I was opening myself up to being judged, to not being liked, which I had gone through quite a bit of bullying when I was in public school, and a little bit in high school as well. So I really wanted to, remain small. So even in the areas that I was naturally talented, finding out now that I was too afraid to have my self-expression in those areas, and you need self-expression for drama and art and music, right? They're fearless tasks, and I was too afraid to express in those spaces. So it was that feeling of, and not knowing that that's what was happening. So I just thought I was not really good at anything. I thought I was mildly average at everything, which made me feel not good enough. I didn't feel competent. I didn't feel, like I could take on the world and accomplish anything. I left feeling like, what is the most, easy, comfortable thing I can do, because I'm so afraid of failing. I'm so afraid of being judged.
What a awful, like, maybe awful doesn't sound like the right even expression, but it just sounds like it was such a heavy time for you to have such an intense array of inner thoughts and dialogue. You mentioned experience being bullied even in grade school. Um, can you give an example?
Yeah, yeah. So I was bullied on the school bus,
Mhm.
and mostly because I lived outside of where the school bus route was. So
Okay.
in order to pick me up, the kids had to take an extra 20-25 minutes on the bus every
Mm-hmm.
single day to be
Right.
able to pick me up and drop me off. So the kids
Oh
associate
no.
extra time, yeah, with
Yes.
hating me and hating
Oh
me being on the
no.
bus. So
Right. So
I
there,
was,
so it was
you
like,
know,
oh no, Claire's on the bus again. We have to do that route.
exactly. Yeah, so they would intentionally be mean to me. They would
Oh,
call me ugly. I
awful.
had yeah, I have a small mole beauty mark on my face,
Mm-hmm.
and that was just their favorite thing, to pick apart and make fun of. And they
They
would
really
call me out
ganged.
and be like, "Yeah,
Yeah, they
what's on
ganged
your
up
face?"
on you.
Yeah, and then I grew up and I have such a vivid memory of that, of one day it happening,
Mm-hmm.
and the boy that I had a crush on, you're in grade school, I'm like 7 or 8 years old, calling me ugly and saying how ugly that is to have on your face. Like, what is
Mm-hmm.
that? And I had my hair in a ponytail that day. And it took until about a year ago where I could start wearing my hair in a ponytail because I had such
Wow.
a strong association with being perceived as
Wow.
unattractive and not good enough with having
Mm-hmm.
my hair up. So even going to the gym for
Mm-hmm.
years, I couldn't put my hair up in public.
Wow. But now you've experienced some body empowerment and love.
Oh yeah, coming into your own and loving who you are on the inside, it radiates to the outside and that radiates to people around you, right?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Amazing that you're able
Mhm.
to like allow yourself to go through that transformation period. And it's amazing. It's incredibly amazing to hear the depth of the pain that you cycled through. It
Mhm.
sounds like it really was, um, it had its challenges, and I'm sure that it really had lots of deep impacts. But it seems like it's made you who you are today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I'm a mix of everything that has happened to me
for
and
sure.
a mix of the choice of how I want to come out of it. Do I want
Yeah.
to come out and take something with it, or do I want to just leave it and be a time that I look back on and cringe at? It's like I don't want to feel that way.
Hmm. As a result of informally being diagnosed with, obsessive compulsive disorder and having all this bullying and that you had to experience, and really having your um, self be impacted with strong associations and the emotional growing pains and the shyness and the low self-esteem and all of those aspects of yourself. Do you feel like there were some narratives like that you held onto about yourself that might have been false?
Yeah, yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is I used to tell myself that I was stupid. That's stupid. You're stupid for thinking that. That's not smart. So the more that you tell yourself what you think you are, the more you believe it, right? That's the story that becomes your story. So my story was I'm not smart. I'm stupid. And that, as much as that did come from the inability to self-express and feel good at things, I also, to mention, felt like I I couldn't keep up with other kids because my brain, I always felt, worked a little different. It processed things slower, which at the time felt like I wasn't smart. It felt like I was dumb. And now I've looked at that, but at that time it felt like, okay, you can't think through things, right? My speech didn't feel like it matched up with my brain. My motor functions didn't really feel like it when I was in dance. Like everything felt like it took so much longer to learn that it was my brain automatically went to, well, it's taking you longer than the average people you're comparing yourself to, so you must not be smart. You must not be able to do these things,
So
right? So
everything compounded came back to, and it's because you're not smart. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, you're not smart. You can't do it. So
exactly.
it didn't matter what
Yeah.
the experience was. But I imagine that while you mentioned that, having a different brain processing system or speed or with
Mhm.
speech and motor function, in addition to all of that, it is very anxiety provoking for what you experienced, whether it was the death anxiety or whether it was the bullying or the inability to self-express, right? It just seems like there was like your voice was taken from you, and it's almost like you felt it was taken from you.
Yes, yes, and can I share something with you? Because that just
Yes.
brought up, like, something so important.
Mhm.
So, one of the and this is a very quick story, my mom could see that I was struggling so much in high school,
Mhm.
and when I was 17, she took me to I had asked about seeing someone because I felt like my brain was moving at a slower rate than other people, and that's all I
Mhm.
could understand at the time.
Mhm.
And I don't know who this person was. I don't think she really remembers who this person was, but she set me up a meeting with someone who she felt would help. My mom was doing as much as she could for me.
Mhm.
And I walk into a room. It's a small room. It's dark. There's a projector on the wall,
Mhm.
and I sat down in a single chair. My mom's in the room, and there's like a 50 to 60-year-old man, and he starts walking around me in circles. And I'm like feeling uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Obviously, I'm shy, I'm young, I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
Mhm.
And he comes up right beside my face, and I had
Right.
braces at the time, and he just starts talking to me. He's like, kind of, I don't even remember what it was, but I felt the energy was very intense. And he steps in front of me and says, "Don't worry." He's like, "When you get your braces off, you'll feel more confident. This will go away. It's all an issue of confidence. And when you get your braces off, you'll feel more confident and you'll be good." And that's what I left that day with the feeling of, oh, it's me, my attractiveness because of my braces, and I'm not confident. Right? So that was about the extent of that, and that was a huge voice suppression too. And that was my last try of trying to figure it out at that time.
And you were
And what
17.
it I was 17. Yeah. And
What a
later
critical
on.
age. It's such a critical age to, be strong and bold to ask for help,
Mhm.
and then to have another experience of voice suppression.
Yes. Yes. And following that in my first year of university, I actually did reach out to a therapist again at the school. She was a counselor, and I felt so unheard in our time that I called my mom to come down, sit in my therapy session, and tell the counselor what was going on because an adult, someone would have to validate what I was saying because I felt so unheard that I had to call someone to come into my counseling session and say, no, this is really true. I needed the validation of an adult to come do that for me. That's how unheard I felt. And then that was my last straw. That was my last. I, it must be me. There must be something wrong with me because no one is listening. No one is taking the time, and it's not changing. And what that did was it led it to a chronic pain disorder in my jaw, from tightening, from not using my voice. I actually changed the way that my jaw moves, and I had years of two surgeries and trying to get my jaw open from suppressing my voice and holding it in for so long. Like that's how it manifested, from emotional, mental to such a physical piece of life that I had to now, and I still have to deal with.
Sure. And this goes to show that when we don't take care of this part of ourselves and embrace mental beauty,
Hmm.
it takes a toll on us, because whether it's the shame, the judgments, whatever it be, even when I was saying to you previously, like all of the things combined, like the severe death anxiety, the bullying, the inability to self express, and all of the other things that you've shared, and the delicate parts that you've, you know, embarked on or encountered, and
Hmm.
having your feeling like you have no voice, but it is all emotionally and physically exhausting, even though yes, anxiety provoking and all, but brain processing speeds and all of that. But when you're under that intense amount of stress, Of course, you're going to be
Yeah.
exhausted and tired and not able to focus. So, some of it might not be because of anything even related to having OCD or
Yeah.
your brain being processed differently. It's that you're taking on the whole world,
Exactly.
and that is
Exactly. I'm like,
exhausting,
it's so exhausting.
right? Mm-hmm. Now, Claire, when people come to see me for therapy, individuals typically they're in one of three spaces. Some people are at the beginning, they're getting started. Um, they want to, you know, start sorting out, their all of the pieces of their puzzles or puzzle rather.
Mhm.
And some people are in the middle. Maybe they're going through something acute and they need some help navigating, or they're just in the thick of things. And some people are looking back where they want to now get closure, move forward into another chapter of their life, or now after being detached from some you know big challenges in their life, they want to go back and explore and unpack and deal with any unfinished business. Where in your life or in your journey of what we've encountered today, where would you say that you are? Would you say that you're getting started, in the middle, or looking back?
Thanks for the question. I really do think I'm looking back, and I don't say that from a place where I don't think I'm processing. I don't think I'm growing, but I feel so confident in claiming, that I have healed from it because I now show up in so many spaces and have such a strong sense of self and identity and love in that I don't fear it anymore. I don't fear the judgment. I don't fear the someone not liking me because I know when I walk into a space, my intention is to give off love and light. And if you know me, you know that's what I give off. And if I were to hide that, then I'm not doing myself I'm doing myself an injustice and the people around me because I know the impact I have when I walk into a space and I'm fully my authentic self. And I don't ever want to take that from me or from those that experience me as well.
I love, love, love your transformation. In your intention is to give love and light. How beautiful! And there's no
Mhm.
hiding. You're fully like, I'm here. And
Yeah.
I heard you say something. I have impact. That's the energy I heard from what you just expressed. I have impact.
Yes.
I walk into a room and I have impact. You're owning that. You're owning and
Mhm.
claiming. I love it.
Yes.
That's
Yes, exactly.
that's
And
the
that's where
energy.
the
You didn't say
embrace.
those words exactly, but that's the
Mhm.
energy of like what just kind of came to my mind. Those are the words that just popped in as you were talking. I have impact. That's the energy. It's wild.
Ah,
Like a healthy
thank you.
wild. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, Miss Claire. So
Mhm.
we have talked a lot about your story. We have unpacked so many areas. But I'm wondering if you can share a little bit. We already have been picking at your self esteem and looking at different ways that you've been affected, but anything that you can share that you haven't shared already about how this journey with the OCD and, you know, it transforming from a physical outward, display to an inward, like the inward complexities and the
Mhm.
dialogue and all of that the wrath of it. How has all of this affected your mental health? Are there other things that you experienced that we haven't touched upon today?
It definitely there's a lot of things that we have touched upon.
Hmm.
There is a positive side, of how it affects my mental health.
So before we talk about the
Or
positive side,
yeah. Mhm.
were there any other aspects like um, in terms of, and you may not have had these experiences. I'm definitely not trying
Mhm.
to put any words or experiences into your story. But did it get to the point where, when you share things like that was my breaking point or like that was the
Mm.
last straw, like did it ever get to the point where you were contemplating living or not living, or did it take you down a spiral of like having a really extremely low mood or like not wanting to get out of bed or
Mhm.
anything like that?
Yeah, thank you so much for rephrasing that. Yes. Yes, 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 to all of that. I experienced such intensity when I experienced emotion. So when I was really happy, I was euphoric, cloud 9. When I was sad, it was rock bottom. It was hopeless. It was nothing will ever change. It was, feeling frozen for hours, unable to study or do work from feeling so overwhelmed. It was overeating, it was binge eating. That was something I struggled with my whole life. And another part of it was things had to be even. So I won't get too much into it, but for example, I have 4 pets right now, not because I wanted 4 pets. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats, but because I had 1 dog and 1 cat and I couldn't stand that there was only 1 of each. To me, it felt really unfinished because it was 1 and 1. So I had to. I didn't feel like I had a choice. I had to get another cat and I had to get another dog because it felt so much like unfinished and uneven. So that there's been little nuances of that throughout my life as well, dealing with it. Um, so with all the strong emotions and the things matching up and yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating because I don't always think that people understand the true full blown inner workings of what happens behind the scenes, like inside the mind of someone who isn't just experiencing anxiety. And anxiety on its own or depression on its own can be so debilitating for people. But when
Yes.
when it's compounded with all of these other factors, um, like the OCD tendencies and, whether it's a formal diagnosis or not, it takes a big toll on your mental clarity.
Yes. Yes, because you don't know what's real and what's not. How are you supposed to distinguish the like what is what?
And when you're questioning your self-worth constantly and and whether it's you questioning it or your self-worth being questioned, or however it be, or feeling that it's being questioned, and then, with your narratives of I'm stupid, that's stupid, I'm not smart, that's not smart, and I'm not enough, I'm small, I have to stay small.
Mhm.
All these different belief systems, um it really messes with you.
Yeah. It does. It totally messes with you.
I cut you off. You were going to tell me about some positive impacts. So,
Oh.
why don't you tell me about some of the positive impacts in a sentence or two?
Yeah. I have determination and drive when I am passionate about something. One of the parts I don't think actually we did touch on that comes with that is the hyper focus and obsessiveness. So for me, this, growing up, it was Beanie Babies. I had 350 of
Oh
them,
my
and
goodness.
I had to, yes, and I have a cabinet for them still. And I knew all of their names, I knew their birthdays, I knew their eye color, and my playing was organizing them. So I'd organize them by eye color and then I'd mess them all up and then I'd organize them by name. So, and I could do that for 8 hours straight. And I still can do that with certain things. My partner and I play Pokemon cards and we organize those for several hours in a row. But it's that ability to put your nose to the grind and the grit that comes with it when you're passionate about something. And to me, that's helped me succeed when I feel fueled by what I'm doing. So when I went through the social service worker program, I loved the material, I loved learning, I loved everything we did in the program. So I could sit, and do the work for several hours in a row, which, maybe wasn't always great, but at the time it got me to where I needed. And it was through that ability to obsess and hyper focus on a passion
You could fully
that
immerse in it. You could fully
I
immerse
fully
in it.
immersed in it. Yeah, and I got a
Yeah.
4.1, GPA.
Nice.
Was unheard of for
Congrats.
me. Yeah,
Wow.
because I was able to put my passion and use that. But
Mhm.
I don't know if I'd
Mhm.
say that's like positive because you got to. I think a lot of
Well,
the
I mean,
time
it's all
I
about balance, right? But I think what you're saying
yeah.
is that while I went through the ringer, There are some
Mhm.
things that it has taught me about myself, whether it's determination or resilience or strength or bravery or tapping into your
Mhm.
passion or turning something obsessive into or turning an intense state like hyper focusing and hyper arousal into like passion. I mean, it's a gift.
Mhm. It is. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
And it's
thank you.
beautiful. All right, Claire, tell us, what is your key message to the listeners of our show? What do you want them to know?
I want them to know that it's worth it to give your time yourself the time and reflection and and self-love and compassion to find out who you are and discover that person and allow that person to be big and to be bold and be fully embraced within your spaces, because I think that's what brings along a true authentic sense of belonging. We're not trying to fit in, we're not trying to be someone we aren't to fit into a space. We want to belong in our spaces, and that only comes from expressing yourself in the most authentic way. And by doing that, you have to know yourself, right? So it's worth taking the time and the energy and in that self-reflection to be able to live your life in the most fulfilling way that you possibly can.
That is such an inspiring message. I I hear it so loud and clear that always advocate for yourself. Everything
Yes.
matters. Figure it out. Allow yourself. Get to know yourself and
Yes.
live.
Yes.
And I love how you talked about belonging in your space. And the way to do that is to
Mhm.
express yourself, and the way to express yourself is to get to know yourself. It's like you're
Mhm.
you're you're talking about the domino trend, and then you're going backwards and saying this is how you this is the
Yeah.
map, this is the map, the step before that, the step before that, and the step before that. I love this deep message of honoring yourself and accepting circumstance and not giving in or giving up while remaining present. It's such a rich message. What was game changing for you in terms of inspiration that's close to you? So sometimes people tell me that there's a quote, a book, an event, uh, a space, something that spoke to you or that really like enlightened you. For you,
Yeah.
was that your backpacking trip or was it something else?
I would say that the backpacking trip was vital, because it took me out of every single comfort zone I had ever known. And
Right.
and I had to budget,
Right.
$30,000, give
Whoa.
a 22-year-old that much money. And I had worked for it. I it was all from tips from serving at the bar. So I worked, I budgeted, every day was planned, and organized, naturally for me. Um, but if I, there is a quote that has stuck with me like forever, and it is, give yourself 1,000 breaks and then give yourself 1,000 more. And that totally reflects my untold story. You have no other choice but to give yourself compassion, because when you're opening yourself up to true reflection and true healing, you're opening yourself up to criticism and self critique. And you have to be able to listen to that and then implement the action, right? Just so you can be your favorite self. I know people talk about their best self, but what's your favorite self? So
Your
that's
favorite
that's
self.
the quote. Yeah. Yeah,
Favorite self.
right?
Can I
My favorite
borrow?
self.
Can I borrow that?
Yes.
So
Yes, right?
so there's a difference between so for you there's a difference between your best self and your favorite self.
I think that there's a lot of intersecting moments between them, but my favorite self is when I feel in harmony. I feel in harmony with nature when I step outside. I feel in harmony when I walk into a room with people I don't know, and I feel the energy from it, and I feel like I can be myself. And that's what my favorite self is, when I can go into a space and be me and be silly and quirky and loving and positive and know that that's what I'm exuding, right? But my best self may be very when I'm feeling very productive, right? And I'm sitting and I'm getting the good work done, right? So there's a few different differences, but my favorite self is my favorite one.
I love it. I'm totally borrowing it. Um,
Mhm.
I hear it as accepting all parts of me and all the imperfections. I'm in harmony
Yes.
with myself. Whether I'm productive or not, I'm my favorite. Okay, so tell us, what is a cause or an organization that's been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to? Who would it be?
I'm going to say an organization, and I'm slightly biased because I work for them, but it's
Mhm.
called All Women Lead. And it's events for women that just empower women. And every time I attend one, because I listen to it while I do the event management as well, I feel re-inspired, and I gain something new to bring into my life. So the continuation of personal and professional development from hearing other women share their true stories, just like you do on this podcast, is invaluable.
Oh, yeah. What a great, what a great shout out to have. Thank you. Okay, so how can people connect with you if they would like to? For social media, we have your Instagram, LinkedIn, the Manifesting Excellence Coaching website. Are those the
Mhm.
best ways to be in touch with you, or was there anything else?
Yeah, no, those are great ways.
And so we're going to have all of this information up on the show notes page. So
Perfect.
if people go in and check it out, they'll be able to see the full description and all the
Okay.
ways to get in touch with you. Claire, guess what?
What?
You've just dared yourself to share.
Oh
Congrats.
my gosh. I'm dance partying over here.
Oh,
Went out
I
too
love that
hard
you're
to let the
dance
mic
partying. I'm
go.
dance partying too.
Love it.
Virtual dance party. Claire,
Yeah.
I would just like to take a moment would just like to take a moment and express my gratitude for the story that you've shared today, articulating so clearly the journey that you have been on to find and understand the depth of yourself, all while being in the experience and challenges or being challenged, with OCD and what unfolded in life for you as a result of it all. Like your story is
Mhm.
such an important one to share and to be heard. And today was nothing but brave and bold and fearless. And to show up in your full form today, like you completely disarmed with such openness. So I
Mhm.
am truly grateful to have been able to hear and witness your story today. So thank you for the deep conversation and for all the daring and sharing. You rock.
Thank you so much for giving me the space to do that. This has been incredible. Thank you. Thank you, Selena.
Once again, Claire, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.